New Jersey 2nd District Senator Vincent Polistina joins us to discuss some of his efforts in his first year in the New Jersey Senate. It's all here on the next Latino Motion. Join us.
Choose to get lost in the woods to gain experience in forest management.
Choose to travel through time to understand the past.
Choose to soar to pursue a career in dance.
Stockton University offers 50 high-quality academic programs, small class sizes, and affordable tuition. Choose to match your interests and talents at one of New Jersey's nationally ranked universities.
Latino Motion with Bert Lopez is presented by Latino Motion Public Affairs Media, a New Jersey nonprofit corporation, and Stockton University. This edition of Latino Motion with Bert Lopez is brought to you by the HD Studios at the campus of Stockton University.
Funding for Latino Motion is provided by Atlanticare, offering primary, specialty, and urgent care, plus surgery and more. Atlantic City Electric, energy for a changing world. And South Jersey Gas.
Welcome to Latino Motion, a weekly interview show highlighting issues impacting New Jersey's Latino community while advancing understanding of Latino cultural heritage and contributions to our society. And here is your host, Bert Lopez.
Buenos dias and welcome to Latino Motion. I'm happy to have as my guest Senator Vince Polistina. He is the 2nd District Senator for New Jersey. Senator, welcome to Latino Motion.
Yeah, great to be here, Bert. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. And I tell you, I know that this is only your first year in the Senate, but you have a long history in the legislature as an assemblyman prior to that. Tell me a little bit more about your experience so far in this new role.
Yeah, new role, just wrapping up year one, Bert. Totally different from the Assembly. I spent 4 years in the Assembly from 2008 to 2011. Much different than the Senate because you have some role in the appointment process. So, that's been a big focus of the last year. And of course, Senate only has 40 people. I found it to be much more collegial, where we're working together more, across party lines with Democrats and Republicans. Worked very well with the administration, the Murphy administration. So far, the relationships we built and the work we're getting done, very pleased with how year one went.
Talking about that bipartisanship and the fact that you play a big role in making appointments, I had the pleasure of attending the swearing in of a few judges, one of which is my friend Jorge Coombs. And what I took away from that, which is the great diversity that really these judges represent our community. Not only was there just the second Latino appointed as a judge, you also had 2 African Americans. I believe you also had a 5th judge that's being appointed.
Yeah, so that's been one of the areas that we have worked really strongly with the administration. And pleased to report we now had 5 Superior Court judges nominated by Governor Murphy, fully confirmed by the Senate. Michelle Perry Thompson, Jorge Coombs, you mentioned. Ralph Pallone was just yesterday. Steve Scheffler. All went on the bench. Very pleased to have them done, along with Jeff Wilson, who you mentioned, African American, grew up in Atlantic City, member of the LGBT community. And so, at the end of the day, we ended up, everybody, stresses having the bench mirror the communities they represent, and very pleased that once we got this process done, we had 2 African Americans, 2 Caucasians, 1 Latino that are now part of the Atlantic County bench, one of the finest benches, if not the finest in the entire state, and they're going to continue that tradition. So it's one of the areas that very proud of what we were able to get done.
Yeah, and not only that, you also had the privilege of appointing and helping to appoint the prosecutor for the county.
Yeah, that one was a little different than the judges. That took a little more effort, a little more time, and some more conversations. But when I went into the Senate, one of my primary focuses was making sure we got qualified Atlantic County people in these positions. And so, that was something that I went in immediately and started meeting with them a year ago on. And after conversations and meetings and consultation, we got Will Reynolds as our Atlantic County prosecutor. He's doing a fabulous job for this community. He grew up in Brigantine, went to Holy Spirit, now lives in Absecon. He's a local guy. He was a local prosecutor for many communities, knows the law enforcement people in the area, knows our communities, and really has hit the ground running. And so, I think from the perspective of law enforcement, he's doing fabulous. And also, as we deal with the challenges from the pandemic and everything that we have gone through, some of the social service needs, he has really taken the ball and started to run with it, dealing with some of these issues with mental health, homelessness, addiction, really beyond what anybody in that spot has ever done. So really pleased to work with him on those issues as well.
And Senator, we just had him on the show last week, so certainly we certainly learned a lot about him, and certainly has a great track record so far already working with the community. Talking about the community, one of the big issues in our community is certainly economic development. And I know that you've also have had your hand in terms of bringing more economic development to the region. Tell me a little bit more about those efforts.
Yeah, so that, of course, as we try to, come out of the pandemic and deal with the economic challenges we have, one of the huge things is creating some diversity in some of the development we have here. I mean, obviously, we have the casino industry, which is extremely important, but we need to diversify. And so one of the things that we hope that will allow this area to take off is the aviation industry. We have the airport, we have the FAA center. We have the first building at the research park, and so we have been working hard to try to get some funding for the next building at the research park. We have about half of the funding in place, and we're pretty close to having the balance. And then you're going to see the second building at the aviation research park take off. We also have been focusing on some transportation issues around the old Shore Mall area, making sure we improve that traffic situation, get direct access to the Garden State Parkway. And of course, never forgetting how important Atlantic City is to the region and making sure we're supporting the things going on in the casino industry, and also, things like the water park that are going on, talking about Bader Field as we move forward, trying to make sure we're doing the best thing to create jobs here, to create opportunities here, and positioning our region for long-term growth.
Let's talk about, you mentioned the airport, and certainly one of your efforts has been to create that link between the airport transportation-wise to the city. Tell me a little more about those efforts.
Yeah, so one of the things when you look at like Vegas or one of these other communities, one of the things that you see is when you get into the airport in Vegas, for example, the slot machines are in the airport. The experience kind of starts right when you get there. Then transportation is pretty simple from the airport over to, the Strip. And so that bill that we did allows for the CRDA to collaborate with SJTA or any other entity on transportation from the airport over to Atlantic City. We think that's very important. So when people get here, into the Atlantic City Airport, they begin that experience immediately, whether we get, some entertainment out there, some other things to do there, and then have transportation right over to Atlantic City. I think it's very important that we do that. And especially now, as you look at some of the the unmanned vehicles, that the technology that is emerging of these vehicles that take off like helicopters and can transport people right over to Atlantic City. We think some of the testing for them can be done here, and then ultimately, the implementation can be here, making it easier for people to get around.
That sounds exciting, but it also sounds like you got to work with a bunch of people. Certainly, that part of the ship, it's very, very important. Tell me about that relationship you have locally here with other officials.
Well, it's been tremendous for the most part. There's a couple little hiccups here and there, but for the most part, from the state administration to my colleagues in the Senate to everybody that works up there, down to the level here with Denny Levinson, the county executive, now the prosecutor, the Atlantic County sheriff, who is the most prominent Democrat in the area, have an absolutely fabulous relationship with him. To all the county freeholders and commissioners, all the way down to the local level. People have been extremely supportive, and we are building relationships and partnerships that are going to benefit this region long beyond my service in the Senate, which is going to be great for the people who live here and want to continue to live here.
certainly a model for the nation, right? In terms of working together and getting things done, which is very important. We want to continue our discussion. We have a lot to cover, and certainly want to talk a little bit more about safety as well as education. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more Latino Motion.
Latino Motion with Bert Lopez is presented by Latino Motion Public Affairs Media, a New Jersey nonprofit corporation. Join us online at www.latinomotion.tv. Find us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. We encourage your comments and contributions for show topics.
Welcome back to Latino Motion. We continue our discussion with Senator Vincent Polistina with the New Jersey 2nd District. And Senator, I know that we were talking about economic development, your focus on the airport, and also you started to mention about your focus in Atlantic City, how critical that is. Tell me a little bit more about your involvement there, and what are some of the challenges, basically, and some of the opportunities that we have in Atlantic City.
Yeah, so I think when we're talking about the future of Atlantic City, I think we start with the impact that Stockton University has had. I know you're taping this with Stockton, and just the impact that Stockton has had on the southern part of Atlantic City. You know, the campus there is fabulous. Had an opportunity to take a tour of the dorms, and of course, you know, some of the facilities there are just absolutely tremendous. Really transformed that area around Albany Avenue. Atlantic Care, you talk about, you know, education and medical, and Atlantic Care just opened up their next facility there right by the hospital, you know, and so we're getting some of the diversification of the economy with an expansion of the education, the medical opportunities in the city. And I think that has got to be key to the future as you talk about the development in Atlantic City. And that really has spurred some of the other things you see happening. And I mentioned the Water Park. Right next to Showboat, you see the transformation of Showboat into some of the things they have done with the arcades, and you know, the just other amenities that are offered for people to do in Atlantic City. And I really think that's the future. That, you know, the gaming industry is doing fairly well. The internet and sports betting certainly has taken off. You know, the brick and mortar with visitors coming here has kind of been a little flat from the 2019 levels. So I really think that they are doing okay. We need to really focus on diversification of the economy, starting with the education and medical, and then looking at other development that we can potentially attract to Atlantic City to give people more things to do. You know, I think the key to making sure that people want to come here is making sure it's clean and safe and lit. And we have been a part of those efforts, because that has got to be a huge component of what we do for Atlantic City as we move forward. It's got to have the perception that it is clean, that it is safe, and we got to get the lights on. And those efforts are underway. You know, pleased to be a small part of it, but we have been a voice to make sure that we are doing the things necessary to position Atlantic City to prosper.
Now, what do you think are the major challenges in terms of that goal of making the city more prosperous?
I think that the financial situation in the city is the most challenging at this point. You know, what happened with when the economy kind of went south on us, and we had additional gaming competition, you know, 07, 08, 09, when I was in the assembly, the additional competition in it with Atlantic City from other gaming jurisdictions, you know, started to have a negative effect on the city's finances. And of course, you know, we did the tourism district initially, and then 5 years later, the state had to come in. And really at that point, there was two choices: bankruptcy for the city, or the state, you know, coming in, not taking over necessarily, but becoming a partner with the city to try to do the things that were necessary. And so we've now had the state, you know, as a partner in Atlantic City for around 6 years. There's about 3 years left on the current bill. We're not there yet. We have more to do, but I would say the city's finances themselves are the biggest challenge. And what I have seen, and you know, as I've gone through this, one of the big problems is when we did the takeover in 2016, they diverted the money from the Casino Reinvestment Development Authority, the entity that's really supposed to be focused on reinvesting, redevelopment in the city. They transferred that money to the city because the city needed those finances, that money, in order to support themselves. And so we've reached a point where CRDA doesn't have much money to do these projects. We've got to figure out a way to replenish that entity, or come up with an entity that's going to be able to really focus on some of the blight, some of the cleanup, some of the things that are necessary.
Talking about moving out away from the city and just the South Jersey region overall, as you know, South Jersey kind of has gotten the short stick in terms of benefit from the state overall. Tell me a little bit more about how you're working with your colleagues here in South Jersey to have bigger impacts from the state here in South Jersey.
Yeah, that's a conversation that is ongoing all the time. Of course, from Congressman Van Drew all the way down to our level to some of the local level. I mean, we have got to get more, federal investment into South Jersey, more state investment into South Jersey. And so that's a conversation we have all the time, looking at potentially light rail, looking at the development of the airport, looking at these types of industries that can really diversify our economy and give people opportunities for kids that want to go to college, that want to either stay here or come here. We have to make sure we are doing the things to reinvest in this South Jersey economy, because we've been way too dependent on one industry for too long. So again, Republicans, Democrats, we have a good bipartisan coalition, and we always say that this is about South Jersey, making sure we're getting our fair share here from the federal government and then from the state government.
I know one of your focus area has been with veterans. You want to tell me a little bit more about some of the programs that you're helping to develop for veterans?
Yeah, it's a discussion all the time. Obviously, housing is something that is very important, as we go forward. What I have looked at and what we're trying to create is the Jim Leeds Road corridor in Galloway Township, where we have Atlantic Care. We have some of the other entities there with, Seashore Gardens and Bacharach and some of the other healthcare facilities. What would be fabulous for our area is some veterans and residential housing. You hear these horrible stories of veterans that are in our area that are now homeless, that fought for this country and are now, on the streets. We have got to change that. And I think the Jim Leeds Road corridor, I think, is an area where we could zone something to do some residential housing specifically for veterans, and hopefully get some state support and some state resources to help build it, and then give them opportunities. Hopefully right there in Galloway Township, easy public transportation, easy to get to the parkway and kind of navigate around. And that's something that we have been trying to work on, or continue those efforts to try to get something like that done.
You mentioned homelessness, and obviously that's a big issue in our area. And anything that you're working on in terms of helping for better outcomes and solutions for the homeless situation?
Yeah, I'm sure you talked about it last week, Bert, with the prosecutor. I mean, what I have been working on with the prosecutor and with the sheriff, again, I'm a Republican, but Eric Scheffler is the top Democratic official in Atlantic County. We work very closely together. So the prosecutor, the sheriff, and I have really been working to get funding for the Hope Exists Foundation. That is Sheriff Scheffler's outreach to the community, which is, hopefully early next year, going to start a 7-day-a-week mobile outreach for the city of Atlantic City, helping people with mental health challenges, helping people with homelessness, helping people with addiction issues. We're going to build a real partnership with all the social service network. Eric will be the kind of the point person and the lead agency that goes out and tries to get people the help they need, because what we have found is those that need help don't always come and ask for help. They're either too proud or don't know how to do it. We're going to make sure we're going to them. And so we have gone, and the casino industry has been very supportive. We have commitments from a number of the casinos to get this ramped up and get it started. And so you're going to see those efforts continue, specifically in Atlantic City, but also throughout Atlantic County, to make sure we're doing the things that are necessary to help people who have challenges in this region.
Well, thank you. I know we still have a few more things that we want to cover. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more Latino Motion. Welcome back to Latino Motion. We continue our discussion with our special guest, Senator Vincent Polistina. He is the 2nd District Senator for New Jersey. Senator, welcome back. We were talking about a lot of issues, and one of them that we ended up the last conversation was about the homeless and some of the efforts there, and somehow how you're cooperating with others in terms of making some improvements. One of the pieces of legislation I believe you're working on is the mental health court, which goes hand in hand with a lot of the homelessness issues that we have. Tell me more about that.
It does, Burton. Thanks. Yeah, the mental health court, some people who are challenged from a mental health perspective now don't need to be in the justice system. And so what we try to do is create a mental health court. It's modeled after one in California, and we've worked with the prosecutor and many of the prosecutor's staff to try to get a piece of legislation that makes sense to give people the opportunity of mental health challenges to go to the mental health court and not necessarily have to go to the regular justice system. Working with Amy Kennedy and some of the people that Amy works with, she is focused on youth mental health. So we're trying to bring everybody together, and we're in the process of preparing legislation that would create a pilot program for a mental health court here in Atlantic County. Again, hopefully getting people the help they need, not necessarily just from a law enforcement perspective, but if we can create the mental health court, getting them routed into mental health court, and hopefully getting them on a path where they will get the assistance they need. And so whether you're homeless or have other mental health issues, that's something we think is very important as we move forward, and hopefully, going to get it introduced in the Senate and the Assembly, and we'll get it adopted as quickly as possible.
Well, just from someone that's been involved and advocate for mental health for many years, I serve on the Atlantic Care Behavioral Health Board, and then transition over to Atlantic Care as a board member there for many years. Certainly, that's great news. Great news to have the mental health court finally come to fruition. I know you've also worked on a number of other pieces of legislation. Tell me about the one that you're working on in terms of the juvenile.
Yeah, so a lot of these, Bert, are coming from the Friday morning meetings that Councilman Kaleem Shabazz hosts. But the city of Atlantic City has asked for specific things, one of which Ken Mosca from Atlantic City Electric has attended, talking about getting the lights turned back on. I know CRDA has recently allocated money to do that. And Atlantic City Electric, little plug, has been fabulous working with us in terms of getting those things addressed. He put me on the email list, and I started getting emails from Atlantic Electric over and over again about everything Atlantic Electric was doing to fix some of the lights over there. But in terms of the juveniles, obviously our shore towns, when we did the marijuana legalization, it kind of took away some of the power and the rights of law enforcement to be able to question juveniles who were in possession of marijuana or alcohol. And obviously, under 21, those are not legal substances. They are still illegal for youth. And so we did a bill to make sure that law enforcement knows they can question juveniles who they suspect to be in possession of illegal drugs or alcohol. The legislation gives them the ability, if they're under 18, to take them down to the station, call their parents, making sure we're involving parents in children's lives, come down to the station and get them like we all grew up with. If you're 18 to 21, the illegal material will be confiscated. If you're over 21, it's legal, and you would be on your way. But we want to give law enforcement the support that they need to make sure that they can do their jobs. We see the juveniles with the pop-up parties. Many of them are legal. But there is some question in law enforcement's minds about what they're able to do right now. And so this legislation would clarify some of that and give them the ability to do their job, which is necessary for our society.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that you need legislation, right, to question juvenile whether or not they're using illegally marijuana or alcohol. But I'm glad that you're taking that initiative, because it's important. It's certainly the safety of our youth. Another issue that we've seen prop up in Philadelphia and other places has been the ATVs. They do cause havoc on the roadways or in someone's backyard, et cetera. Tell me about some of the efforts you're undertaking to help that situation.
We did legislation to create an ATV task force. As you said, it's happening in many cities, including Atlantic City and some of our other cities in New Jersey. Would appropriate $1 million to work out a law enforcement partnership to deal with this situation. Obviously, if a law enforcement officer is in a vehicle trying to chase an ATV, it doesn't work. And so what we're trying to do is build a task force across multiple law enforcement agencies so that we can deal with this issue. You saw that pop-up thing in Wildwood, which resulted in fatalities. And some of these issues, there are multiple ATVs. I understand they're keeping them in some storage sheds or storage facilities in the area. They take them out and, in some cases have 30 ATVs going out and terrorizing communities. And so it's an area that we need to address, and we're trying to appropriate $1 million to create a task force to deal with it.
Would that involve confiscation of the ATVs as well?
Yes. So if they're operated illegally, then yes, they would be confiscated, taken down, just like somebody operating other illegal vehicles. So yes, hopefully get them off the streets, and hopefully as you start to crack down, it acts as a deterrent and you see less illegal activity happening.
Very good. I know that one of the things you also involve is education, and you've actually have been working on a student advisory commission. Tell me a little more about that.
Yeah, so one of the reasons I came back to the legislature was, my kids were older now. When I was in the assembly, my kids were 5 and 6 years old, kind of just starting out their education. Now my oldest son is 17 and my twins are 16, getting ready to go to college, hopefully. And then I wanted them to be able to have opportunities to be able to come back here. And so one of the things, I'm on the higher education committee in the state Senate, and we wanted to look at an advisory committee that is kind of specific to figuring out how can we create opportunities for kids, whether you want to go into a trade or get educated at an institute of higher education. How can we create opportunities that will allow kids to stay in our area? Because one of the things we have seen that has had an impact on the area is you either get educated here and you leave, or you get educated elsewhere and you stay there. We haven't had as many people coming back to this area. We got to reverse that, and we got to make sure there are opportunities for everybody here. And so those are the kinds of things that we're looking to do in terms of the higher education committee.
Oh, that sounds like a great move in terms of getting more of out of the education system and keeping the kids here, because obviously there's a lot of money that gets invested to send our kids to school, and leaving the area is not the ideal situation. Tell me, what you consider, we got a minute left, what's the biggest challenge you're facing in your new role as senator?
I think the biggest challenge is, New Jersey has always been, and the thing that we really need to deal with is property taxes. They are just so regressive, and they drive, families not being able to begin their lives here, or drive people out of the state to other states. And so I think if there's one challenge that I would like to see us really address, from a statewide perspective and a local perspective, it is the property tax situation, the way we fund education. We have got to get that under control so that families can start their lives here, kids can start their careers here, seniors can afford to retire here. It is the most important issue I think we need to deal with at the state Senate level.
Senator, thank you so much. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have. Thank you for joining us here on Latino Motion.
Thanks, Bert. Thanks for the time. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, and thank you all at home for once again being part of the Latino Motion family.
Choose to get your feet wet, to learn more about protecting our environment.
Choose to read minds, to understand the human brain.
Choose to get your hands dirty, to create a masterpiece.
Stockton University offers 50 high-quality academic programs, small class sizes, and affordable tuition. Choose to match your interests and talents at one of New Jersey's nationally ranked universities.
Funding for Latino Motion is provided by Atlanticare, offering primary, specialty, and urgent care, plus surgery and more. Atlantic City Electric, energy for a changing world. And South Jersey Gas.